Pitcher, let me ask you first of all, should Labour-run Bradford be allowed to put up its council tax by almost 15%? 15%.
And I know it's really, really tough for people at the moment, but if you look at Bradford, it's about £148 less than the average council tax across the country. Having said that, if you look at public services, they do need the investment to continue to allow people to access them as well as they possibly can. We've heard about the demands around SEN as well. And of course, Bradford's a city of culture this year, and it needs the investment to support growth.
So the poorest people in Band A properties should be forced to fund City of Culture, should they?
Oh, absolutely not, and absolutely not. No. But what we do need to do is make sure that local authority, and they are trying their absolute hardest to make sure that they can deliver for their residents, and the money that is required, and that is the amount that they need to run their public services to give their residents, those poorest residents, the services that they need to be able to thrive.
You can't imagine if Labour-run Bradford puts its council tax up by 15%, people will be queuing round the block to vote for your party there, will they?
Well, this is about the public services, isn't it? And, it's absolutely essential that those services are maintained and they are looked after. And actually, those people, those residents that live there, the most vulnerable residents that live in those more deprived areas of Bradford, they need to be able to access those services in order to be able to work, in order to be able to have the healthcare that they need, in order to be able to thrive. And that is what we need. And actually, that money will ultimately help the city to grow. It will create growth, and that just reinvests in the city and allows those people to have their jobs and other access to get the services that they should absolutely get.
I think some would disagree whether that money would be put to good use or not. But Ryan Stevenson, have local councils in our part of the world, have they been put in an impossible position after many years of underfunding?
Well, what's made it even worse, and interesting we talk about referendums on council tax, I think if you had a referendum in Bradford on whether they want a year of culture now, you might get an interesting response. But what's made it very worse now for councils is the fact that bond yields have gone up because of the budget from Rachel Reeves, national insurance contributions going up, so businesses in the supply chain for councils are getting more and more expensive. The Labour government's just taken £14 million off North Yorkshire Council's rural support grant. That means it's much harder for rural councils to deliver things like domiciliary care because of its geography. Quite rightly, it had a subsidy for that. It's been snatched away by Rachel Reeves, so it is getting harder, and actually what the Labour government's done is made it much worse.
I'll let you respond to that in a minute, Lee Pitcher, but let me just bring Gemma back in, because I suppose the argument could be this: if Bradford's council tax goes up by 15%, it may not be quite that much, but it could well be a double-digit number. It opens the floodgates for other councils, doesn't it, in our part of the world, to go to the government and say, we want some of that.
Well, and there are other councils across the country who are making, similar requests of government that they too would like to put council tax up by more than is normally allowed. We are in budget setting season for the next few weeks, and we've sat and watched councils make some really tough decisions over the last decade, and councillors would tell you, I'm sure, that a lot of the easy decisions have been made and they've got a lot of tough ones ahead of them.
The whole local government funding system is broken, isn't it?
Well, we put 69 billion into local authorities this year. It's the biggest amount they've had in a decade. That's about a 3% real-term increase for local authorities. Here in the north area, that's actually around about 7% it works out, and in rural communities it works out about 5% on average.
Ryan Stevens is shaking his head.
The net result of the national insurance increase in the supply chain completely takes away the increase that the Chancellor gave in the budget. So it's no better off for any of the local councils now.
But you'd admit that there's a lot more funding gone into councils this year in real terms than it was previously.
No, because the NI contributions have gone up in the supply chain. So next year, the increase we got from government is completely outweighed by the extra costs of inflation in the supply chain.
Just a quick one before you go. A big week in politics, big day tomorrow. Donald Trump returns to the White House. He's inaugurated in Washington, D.C. Serious question, what difference is this going to make to our part of the world?
Well, Trump's been in the White House before. We know what it was like before. So we are ready to work with President Trump, and he's always very clear about what he believes in, isn't he? So we work with President Trump going forwards.
Are you looking forward to the 4 years of Donald Trump?
I didn't remember that tone from the Labour Party last time, I have to say. But look, if you believe Trump, he's solved the Middle East crisis, he's brought about a peace deal. So we'll have to wait and see whether the narrative